Genesis chapter 6 opens with one of the most mysterious and debated passages in the entire Bible. It says that when mankind began to multiply on the face of the earth, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves, whomever they chose. Just a few verses later, the Nephilim are mentioned, described as mighty men of old, men of renown. But who exactly were the sons of God? And why does this passage matter so much that it precedes the judgment of the flood? To understand this, we must slow down and look carefully at the language, the context, and how the Bible uses this phrase elsewhere. The phrase sons of God in Genesis 6 comes from the Hebrew term Beni Ha-Elohim. This exact phrase appears in other parts of Scripture, most notably in the book of Job. In Job chapter 1, the sons of God present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also comes among them. In Job chapter 2, the same phrase is used again. And in Job chapter 38, God speaks of the sons of God shouting for joy at the creation of the world. In every one of these passages, the sons of God are clearly heavenly beings, not human rulers or kings. This is important because Genesis was written long before later interpretive traditions developed. To the original audience, the phrase sons of God would have been understood as divine or heavenly beings. This interpretation is often called the angelic view. According to this view, certain heavenly beings rebelled against God's created order, crossing boundaries that were never meant to be crossed. Jesus himself alludes to this idea when he speaks of angels who left their proper dwelling, language echoed later in the book of Jude. Jude describes angels who did not stay within their own position of authority, but abandoned their proper dwelling and are now kept in eternal chains awaiting judgment. This lines up closely with the events described in Genesis 6. Another passage, 2 Peter chapter 2, also speaks of angels who sinned and were cast into Tartarus, a place of restraint in connection with the ancient world and the flood. Together, these scriptures suggest that something far more serious than ordinary human sin was happening before the flood. It was not just violence, corruption, and wickedness. Although those were certainly present, it was a cosmic rebellion. However, not everyone agrees with this interpretation. Some argue that the sons of God were simply human rulers or kings, powerful men who took women by force. Others believe they were the descendants of Seth, intermarrying with the descendants of Cain. But these views struggle to explain why the Bible uses a specific phrase that elsewhere refers to heavenly beings, and why the result of this union is the appearance of the Nephilim, beings described as mighty and renowned. If Genesis 6 were only about human intermarriage, it is difficult to understand why God's response was so extreme: the destruction of nearly all life on earth. The flood was not just a reset, it was a judgment. Genesis 6 says that the thoughts of mankind were only evil continually, and that the earth was filled with violence. But it also says that God's Spirit would not strive with man forever. There was a line that had been crossed. Many ancient Jewish writings, including the book of Enoch, expand on this idea. While not scripture, these texts show how ancient audiences understood Genesis 6. They describe heavenly beings, often called watchers, who descended to earth, took human wives, and taught forbidden knowledge. Whether one accepts these writings or not, they demonstrate that the angelic interpretation is not a modern invention. It is ancient. And the New Testament writers appear to be aware of these traditions, even if they do not endorse every detail. What is clear is this: Genesis 6 presents a world where boundaries between heaven and earth were violated. Order was replaced with chaos. God's design was corrupted, and judgment followed. This makes the story of Noah even more powerful. In the midst of this rebellion, Scripture says that Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. He was righteous in his generation. That phrase may mean more than moral goodness. Some scholars suggest it also refers to genetic purity, that Noah's lineage had not been corrupted. Whether or not one accepts that view, Noah stands as a contrast to the world around him. He obeyed when others rebelled. He listened when others ignored God's warnings. The story of the sons of God in Genesis 6 reminds us that rebellion against God often begins subtly, but its consequences are severe. It also reminds us that God is patient, but not passive. Judgment may be delayed, but it is not absent. And yet, even in judgment, there is mercy. God preserved humanity through Noah. He preserved his promise. And through that preserved line would one day come redemption. In the next video, we will look more closely at the Nephilim themselves. Who were these giants of the ancient world? And why do they appear again after the flood? If you found this video helpful, be sure to like, subscribe, and join us as we continue uncovering the ancient mysteries hidden in Scripture.